The steamy weather conditions just go on and on and on. I think this is 8 days, 7 or 8 days in a row, 8 days in a row now that we've had dew points above 70. And no break in sight for this week from what we're looking at. So we will take a look at the week ahead. We've got all sorts of flood watches up in the northeast and mid-Atlantic states away from the coast. We'll tell you why they're up inland and not on the coast. And it's still going crazy with rain in some places in Texas. So all of that. Oh, we have a system that we can look at in the tropics too. All of that and much more on this Sunday night Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. And you can support the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. Shop on Amazon. Use our referral link pinned to the top of the chat board. It doesn't cost you a dime out of your own pocket. Just link to Amazon via our link, and Amazon throws us back a little bit of coin for sending you there. And it's a great, easy way, and it keeps the show, at least certainly the live stream, commercial free, except for what we're doing here at the beginning. So by all means, shop through our referral link on Amazon. And if you're looking for a weather station, Tempest by Weatherflow. I got one. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link for this is on the descriptor to this podcast under the title on YouTube. Use the coupon code if you make any purchase off the Tempest website. The coupon code is summer 2025. And if you do, you will get.
You will, of course, get 10% off, which is nice to get.
Yes. So I just noticed this morning there's all sorts of flood watches up in that area in central Texas again, getting some rain. Actually, when we look at the radar right now, the rain's come to a halt, but they've just been getting, unrelenting rains. Meanwhile, we've got, we're in a situation here up and down in the eastern seaboard, particularly for the mid-Atlantic and northeast. We've been so saturated with all this tropical air that when we get these thunderstorm threats, which we're getting inland tonight, they may be a little bit further east tomorrow, but when we get these thunderstorms, they are just, they're slow moving, loaded with moisture, and that's causing some flash flood issues.
It's the type of situation that is not unusual for the month of July. In fact, I think every year, and when we get to July, there's some location that seems to be has the target posted right over them for much of the month. The places that seem to get heavy rain and flooding over and over and over again. This year it looks like it's going to be Texas, but you're absolutely right, Joe. In places up here in the Northeast, if you are unfortunate enough to be in the path of any one of these heavy showers or thunderstorms, you too could end up with some potent amounts of rainfall in a very short interval of time, which is why, as you pointed out, not along the immediate Atlantic coastline, not along the coastal plain, but inland locations, there are some watches or advisories for the potential for flooding from any one of these showers and storms. If not coming their way this evening, again tomorrow afternoon and evening, and into tomorrow night as well.
Yeah, there's probably going to be chances along the way most every day this week, but it's not for everybody. And I think this is one of those setups where you really just have to watch how the radar sets up during the day and then watch to see if these storms, they're not going to be moving from west to east. It's not like we've got a fast moving weather front coming through. These things are going to crawl. So you get under one of those things, you're going to get, you are going to probably get hammered with rain. And it's amazing how, I've been saying how much the atmosphere just feels like a sponge outside. I don't even know how much more water it can retain, considering that the dew points are in the low to mid 70s, and that's kind of on that upper edge of the extreme that you get to when it comes to the dew points.
Yeah, absolutely. In this particular part of the country, the mid-Atlantic area, or in the Northeast, 70 to 75 is usually the topper in terms of dew point condition. Sometimes we see upper 70s, and on a very rare occasion, the dew point may touch ever so slightly touch 80. those are the real extreme situations. But the fact of the matter is that, as you pointed out, Joe, for like 7 or 8 days running now, every single day we have seen dew points hovering within a degree or two of 70 or in the low 70s. And again, that is made for a very, very oppressive stretch of weather here in our part of the country.
Sal Patchy and Birder Lady, both tip jar hitters tonight, and we thank them very much. Thank you for hitting the super chat tip jar. And welcome tonight to everybody on the chat board and those of you who are lurking in the background on this Sunday night. Welcome to tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. We're here Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. And if nature calls, Friday and Saturday, if we add a show, we will always let you know ahead of time. But a good way for you to know that we've added a show is to turn your notifications on so you don't miss us. And you can do that by subscribing to my YouTube channel. So do both those things and you'll never miss us. And of course, one last thing is that if you like the show, hit the like button. Mr. Rayo is going to be doing Rayo's radars tonight because they are busy in areas inland. In the meantime, before we get to that, I just want to run through quickly what's going on in the land of watches and warnings because we do have a rather busy looking uh, watches and warnings map. We have flood watches up for much of central New York. And in fact, you can see there's little red dots in there. And there are some flash flood warnings that are up around Binghamton tonight. And also in one of the counties just to the northeast of Syracuse. We have flood watches covering central and eastern Pennsylvania, more the southeastern part of the eastern Pennsylvania than the northern part. And some watches now also extend into some of the northwest counties of New Jersey, much of Maryland except eastern Maryland, much of Virginia except western Virginia. And even there we see a couple of flash flood warnings. Meanwhile, we still have flash flood watches up across central to northeast Texas and southeast Oklahoma. They got clobbered with rain in central Texas in that area that got the catastrophic flooding a little over a week ago. The rains this time were not nearly as extreme, but you guys still got a lot of water around. So obviously, the flash flood threshold is rather low. You don't need much rain to get stuff to flood again. We have flood watches up also in the eastern counties, much of the eastern counties of New Mexico, heat advisories in the west, heat advisories in parts of the deep south and on the Florida panhandle. And you can see on the satellite tonight, again, it's not that we have every area, these widespread showers and thunderstorms. So what we do have are these slow moving storms in upstate New York through central Pennsylvania. I mean, they're really only moving a handful of miles over a matter of a couple of hours, which is causing heavy rains to fall and generating those flash flood warnings that we mentioned. We're seeing some scattered showers in parts of the Carolinas, across the Gulf states. Again, not everybody's getting them. And now most of the thunderstorm and rain activity has moved more into northeast Texas and into western Louisiana, at least for the time being. And we have some scattered thunderstorms and even a little bit of severe weather that's starting to pop up in parts of the Southwest. So Joe's got the local, is going to take us around on a few local radars, and he should be all set to go here. Are you
All
not?
right. Yeah, I'm all set and ready with the radars, and I'm going to start tonight in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. And you can see on this particular radar scan that there are some potent storms that are located actually to the north of the capital, up in south central Pennsylvania. There's some rather strong shower and storm activity, and that basically is it as far as major convection is concerned. Except we do see some flare up across the, I believe you call that the Panhandle area of West Virginia, and also in portions of Northern Virginia. There are some rain and showers as well. If we go to some other locale, like for example, Dover Air Force Base, not really picking up all that much. New York and much of Long Island, New York, Long Island, much of New Jersey, and eastern Pennsylvania, not really seeing all that much. There is if you notice right here, not too far from Philadelphia, a little bit of a localized flare up that is occurring. And this storm that popped up is moving or drifting slowly to the north. But again, not all that much to write home about there. In Kentucky, we have in Jackson, Kentucky, showers and thunderstorms showing up over in West Virginia. And also here's some activity that's creeping into the northern and northwestern portions of Kentucky here. And that activity again, notice a lot of the thunderstorm cells are, rather small, rather localized, but also rather intense. And as we just pointed out a few minutes ago, if you happen to be located in the path of one of these, or if you're located in underneath any of this, the fact that they're moving relatively slowly means that they could put down quite a bit of rain in a relatively short interval of time. So keep that in mind. If you see the skies darken and get rather ominous in the days to come, and that you're in line for a thunderstorm, again, you may see quite a bit of the wet stuff in a rather short interval of time. South central sections of Pennsylvania, you can see the flare up here on the Pittsburgh radar. Pittsburgh itself not really seeing all that much, but again, places off to their east getting into some showers and storms. We've already seen some of that in the Washington, D.C. radar. Going to look at Binghamton, and you can see here there's several strands or ribbons of activity. Some heavy-duty showers and storms working their way to the north and west of the capital district of Albany, also north of Syracuse. Binghamton itself looks like it has had a rather healthy shower or storm pass on through, and there's a short line that is moving slowly in from the west to east direction, moving across the border of New York State and northern Pennsylvania here. And again, the activity all moving generally slowly to the east. Let's head on down to.
By the way, I just want to mention really quick because there's two flash flood warnings that are up, and one includes the county that Binghamton is in. And I'm just reading off the statement. So this is for Broome and Tioga counties in upstate New York. Law enforcement reported thunderstorms producing heavy rain between 2.5 and 4 inches has fallen. And the expected rainfall rate is to be 2 to 3 inches in an hour. And additional rainfall amounts of another 1 to 3 inches are possible in the warning area. So there's some serious heavy rains going on in the vicinity of Binghamton. The warnings lie just on the northern half of the county there. So Binghamton's kind of on the edge. So some pretty interesting, the pretty heavy rains. 2.5 to 4 inches of rain is not to be sneezed at, and then you got more on the way. So we're going to be, certainly keeping our eyes on that.
And as I pointed out, Joe, it's not so much that there's an extensive area or a wide area of heavy precipitation. Again, these are basically little clusters or little cells of precipitation, but they're very potent cells, and they are moving relatively slowly. And so as a result, you can receive, as Joe just mentioned, some spots have already had like 2.5 to 4 inches of rain, and you could receive quite a bit of rain in, let's say, just an hour's time from any one of these. And again, this all goes back to the fact that the atmosphere in this part of the country is just incredibly saturated. I mean, we have, again, this is what happens when you have even small disturbances interact with dew points that are in the 70 or 75 degree range. Those disturbances, even if they're relatively small, can squeeze out a lot of moisture in, again, a very short period of time. This is Norfolk, Virginia, Wakefield area, and you can see in this particular case, we have showers and storms that seemingly are moving mostly north to south. And again, some of this activity, particularly in the eastern part of North Carolina, flaring up. You can see those angry oranges and reds. And that, again, is a sign that there's some heavy-duty rains and some potent thunderstorm activity occurring again, in concentrated areas, relatively small areas. And again, it's not widespread. I mean, this is the kind of a situation where you could get bombed with heavy rain and maybe 5 miles up the road, you don't see a single drop. This is Columbia. I'm just like scanning around here now. Columbia,
Yeah,
South
after
Carolina.
after this, go to near Indianapolis because the rain in Indiana is pretty substantial,
Okay.
and then after that, go to Northwest Louisiana, like Shreveport.
Alrighty. Your wish is my command. This view in South Carolina showing that there's a kind of a strand of heavy duty activity occurring over eastern sections, well inland from the coast, but eastern sections of South Carolina, and more flare ups occurring down over the south end of the state. Joe wanted to see, among other places, Indianapolis. And if we look at Indianapolis, you could see here's Indianapolis itself, and they're picking up on these showers and storms coming in and moving through from the west. And again, this activity moving from west to east, but there's another area south of Indianapolis, and that area seems to be sweeping up from the south and southwest across the lower end of the state. And again, you said, Joe, looks like quite a bit of activity that's occurring, quite a few showers and storms occurring down over the central and southern area of Indiana, and also in the adjacent state of Illinois, southern Illinois. And in fact, there's this one blob here that is crossing the border from Illinois into Indiana. So a lot of action going on there. We also, Joe wanted to see Louisiana. Here's Shreveport, Louisiana, and it's actually picking up on a line of very intense shower and storm activity over northeastern Texas, moving from west to east into Louisiana and also into a part of southwestern Arkansas. And this activity, again, loaded probably with a lot of heavy rainfall and a lot of moisture. So, what else is new? This is what we're seeing not just in the deep south, but again, most everywhere you go up in the Northeast, the Mid Atlantic, the Midwest, wherever the activity is taking shape, that's where you are getting the heavy duty rains and possible strong gusty winds, along with some convection in the form of thunderstorm activity.
Oddly enough, and I've pulled out to the wide shot for a moment. Oddly enough, with all the thunderstorms that are going on, except yeah, we've got these flash flood warnings. There are no severe thunderstorm warnings up anywhere, and in fact, there are no severe thunderstorm watches up. These are all really these are all actually there is a couple now. Just as I open my mouth, we've gotten two severe thunderstorm watch warning boxes up right along the Louisiana Texas state line, and then in the area in central Texas that in Kirk County and the surrounding counties that have been dealing with all the still coming off that horrific event from over a week ago, had some very heavy rains overnight. And this morning, when I looked at the map, that area was covered with rain and covered with flash flood warnings, and the risks will continue there. We also have some severe weather going on in parts of southern New Mexico, southwest Texas, and southeast Arizona, where couple of severe thunderstorms and a couple of flash flood warnings have been put up there. The Storm Prediction Center, they have a slight risk from central Pennsylvania through central and northern New York. But you can see how sharply it cuts off. So it's mainly I-81 westward. The I-81 corridor is kind of dictating all of this. Marginal risk from central to northeast to central to east Texas, and then northeastward from there into southern Indiana, southern Illinois, western Kentucky. We've got a marginal risk covering much of the state of Florida. Marginal risk from eastern South Dakota, northeastward through northwest Iowa into Minnesota, and a marginal to slight risk in New Mexico, West Texas, and in southeast Arizona. Now, tomorrow, SPC has got a marginal risk, kind of like today, that dips down into central North Carolina, cuts through Virginia, stays mainly west of the coastal plain, though. And the marginal risk includes northern New Jersey, much of northern New Jersey, central and eastern Pennsylvania, and parts of south central New York State across the Hudson Valley north of Route 84, pushing into western Massachusetts and into southern Vermont. And there's no indicated elevated tornado risk, although an isolated spin up can't be ruled out. And then on day 3, and this is for Tuesday into Wednesday, we have a small area of marginal risk in southern Illinois, southern Indiana, western Kentucky, and eastern Missouri, and also a marginal risk from northeast Wyoming and Nebraska, South Dakota to Minnesota, northwest Wisconsin, and a small portion of the upper peninsula of Michigan. Now, WPC is doing the uh, flash flooding risks, and they have a slight risk tonight from Virginia to New York State. Again, it sharply cuts off right along the New Jersey Pennsylvania state line. A slight risk in southernmost Indiana and Illinois into eastern Missouri. And then we still have what was bigger this morning, a shrinking moderate risk in south central Texas with a slight risk. And a moderate risk is at least a 40% chance to as much as 70% for flash flooding. And a slight risk is 15 to 40. And that pushes up into eastern Oklahoma and western Arkansas. Also in eastern New Mexico, we have a slight risk. Now, tomorrow in the east, and WPC has expanded this now, they have a slight risk going from north central North Carolina. They include most of the coastal plain, all of New Jersey to New York City, uh, the Hudson Valley going north, up to Albany and a little bit beyond that, southern Vermont into New Hampshire, western and central Mass, the western third of Connecticut. So a pretty large area of slight risk, the marginal risk on either side of that. Half of Long Island is in marginal risk. The eastern half is not. Southeastern New England is not in it. We also have a slight risk for flash flooding for much of the peninsula of Florida, so particularly central and southern Florida. A marginal risk from central to northeast Texas, northeastward into southern Missouri, and then west into southwest Texas, southern New Mexico, and southeast Arizona. Day 3, which is for Tuesday into Wednesday, has a marginal risk from southeastern New England down the coastal plain through Long Island and New Jersey, southeastern and southern Pennsylvania, all of Maryland, Delaware, Virginia, much of West Virginia, much of North Carolina, a little more than half of South Carolina, a good chunk of the state of Georgia. Then we get to a slight risk again in southern Florida, a slight risk from northeast South Dakota to north right across through, from northeast Nebraska, eastern South Dakota, through cutting Minnesota on a diagonal. So you compare these two, Joe, between the SPC forecast, which is sort of on the lines of a marginal to maybe as at worst case scenario, slight risk, because the bigger emphasis here is the fact that there's so much tropical air, particularly in the eastern part of the United States, is so saturated with tropical air that these are rain producers, and that really, I think, is the front and center issue.
And we do have a weather front, a cold front that is going to move ever so slowly south and east from western New York and eventually into the immediate tri-state area. But that won't come until probably late tomorrow night and early morning hours of Tuesday. And that is the catalyst for the potential for a dose of rather heavy rain. Tomorrow, we may have a few showers early in the day. There may be more widespread activity during the midday and afternoon, and then sometime tomorrow evening, as that front gets closer to us from the north and west, and that'll be coinciding with the time of maximum diurnal heating. A lot of the activity will be bubbling up to percolating, if I may use that term, to produce localized heavy showery rains. That's when, if there is going to be any kind of flash flooding or any kind of flood issues late tomorrow afternoon into at least the first part of tomorrow night, that's when the rains are going to be at their worst locally. And then as we move on through the rest of the night, the rains will gradually peter out, and hopefully we'll be able to put an end to them, or put an end to the shower threat during the early part of the day on Tuesday. Not too sure when exactly we might dry out a little bit on Tuesday, may come in the afternoon, but In any case, whereas, as you pointed out, Joe, a lot of the activity now is just off to the west, inland, away from the coastline and away from the immediate New York City area. All of that is going to slowly but surely shift into the immediate tri-state area during the day tomorrow and into tomorrow night. So be advised, there'll be some wetness out there, especially again later tomorrow and into tomorrow night.
So when you look at WPC's rainfall forecast for the northern plains, the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, the Mid-Atlantic, even parts of the Southeast, and going up into New England, in general, now there's some exceptions, but in general, we're talking a half to three-quarters of an inch. However, we've got areas of an inch and a half plus being indicated, and you see in those purple blotches from upstate New York down into northeast Georgia. Now remember, we're talking convective action here, so those numbers could easily double or even triple in local areas, which is why you see the areas that we have that WPC has indicated with respect to flash flooding. In Florida and along the Gulf Coast, we have a system that's there across the across the eastern Gulf of Mexico into the Atlantic side of Florida, which the Hurricane Center does mention, and we'll see what the 8 o'clock says. I'm not expecting that they've changed things very much, and indeed they haven't, although they've marked off an X off the east coast of Florida, indicating that some kind of low center may develop and then wind up in the eastern Gulf. They say environmental conditions could support some gradual development of the system during the middle to latter part of the week as it moves west over the northeastern and north central portions of the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of America, is to make everybody happy. And there you go. And I just want to also point out, actually, I'm going to go to the icon model because the 18Z icon model for the first time, I mean, the models have been kind of trying to show something there, and some of the European ensembles apparently do. But the icon operational actually forms a low off the east coast of Florida late tomorrow, brings it over into the Gulf, and then eventually develops it into a tropical storm and maybe even to a minimal hurricane heading into Louisiana at some point late this week. Now, there's a lot of time between now and then, and we don't know yet if anything is going to happen. But the icon's the first model to kind of pop this up. The European the other day had something. The 12Z European has some hints there. The one thing I did notice, Joe, in terms of the upper air conditions, when we look at the map, I mean, the outflow conditions are not ideal, but it is going to be an area of low shear from the east coast of Florida into the Gulf of Mexico. There's going to be very light winds, and that could be conducive for something to develop from the bottom up. So we'll have to watch this carefully here, this area in the Gulf of Mexico as we move into next week, because that could have ramifications as far as more heavy rain is concerned, and who knows where it winds up going down the road. But something certainly we need to keep our eyes on, because Joe, as well as I do, sometimes these tropical storms wind up doing, you don't have the wind issue, but you could certainly, particularly if it's something that's slow moving, you could certainly have a big rain issue with them.
Oh, I mean, you just have to mention to the folks in Houston, Texas, the name Harvey. You talk about a tropical system that moved very, very, very slowly, but dumped humongous amounts of rain. I think 30 to 40 inches. I mean, that's the thing that's the killer, the slow movement of these systems. You want, you know, you have a certain amount of ambivalence when you talk about tropical storms or hurricanes. You don't want them to move so slowly as to drench you with tremendous amounts of rainfall. On the other hand, if you have a tropical system that moves very quickly, the sheer forward speed adds to the wind component and can cause great damage in terms of strong winds. So you lose on both counts. you just kind of wish that you didn't have to deal with them, period. But again, and I've mentioned this on other occasions here on Joe and Joe, we actually need tropical cyclones. We need tropical storms and hurricanes because it's Mother Nature, it's the Earth's only way of letting off steam, the excess or surplus amount of heat that builds in the atmosphere during the early and middle parts of the summer. By late summer, the Earth has to find a way to get rid of it, and indeed, the way it gets rid of it is by creating these terrible storms, hurricanes, and tropical storms, which sadly, in some cases, have to move toward the mainland where population centers are, and therein lies the problem for a lot of people. And in spite of the fact that people like Dr. Neil Frank and other folks at the Hurricane Center have been desperately trying or had desperately trying to keep people from or real estate people from building all of this along the coastal plain of Florida and the Carolinas. Oh, but it's so beautiful. Oh, I love an oceanfront view and everything. Yeah, it's beautiful, but when one of these storms comes rolling your way, then you've got big, big, big problems, and that's something that they have to face, or something that we have to consider most every summer, and we're getting into that time of the year once again.
By the way, you know who's having, in general, not every place, but do you know who's having a cooler than normal summer?
A cooler than normal summer would be
Hmm.
what? The into the central or United States? I'm
No, no,
looking at
no.
you.
Well, it's in the North American complex.
Okay, so you had the answer. What would be the place? If I had the money, I would go to that place right now.
Canada. Canada has
Canada.
been Canada has not. I mean, it's been a little bit on the warm side in eastern Canada, but much of central and northern Canada has actually seen a stretch of cooler than normal temperatures. And I'm just running through the anomalies here over the next 2 weeks, and it sort of stays that way, which is kind of interesting. That there's cooler, there's been cooler air sitting to our north, but we've had this ongoing problem in that we haven't been able to get troughs to dive down into the eastern part of the United States, save for the last one that was really around the 4th of July, where we got that nice shot of dry air. Didn't really do a whole lot with the temperatures. It did bring them down, but it brought the dew points down nicely. Well, if we look over the next couple of weeks, most of the flow in Canada is coming from the polar regions, which this time of year are not particularly cold, relatively speaking, but it's keeping things kind of on the coolish side. And it's also been a bit on the wet side up in Canada. So that's kind of interesting. In the meantime, we still have we're on the edge of the westerlies here. The Bermuda High continues to pump up moisture. We get these little ripples that move along in the flow every couple of days or so, and that's going to continue. Now, there is a little bit of troughing here from Labrador into New England come next Sunday and Monday. Maybe that means that the dew points could come off a little bit, although I want to see some, more proof of this. And, there's still stuff running around, but it's kind of I just find this kind of interesting that, you know, the flow in Canada it's not like you've got ridging going all the way up into eastern Canada or even into western Canada. You do have, for this time of year, a couple of little spinning vortexes that are dropping southward, particularly in the latter part of the forecast period. That's a nice looking upper low that dives down into Labrador if it verifies. Wonder what that means when we get into August. I don't know, but again, I'm just kind of pointing out that there are things that are happening here that you might not necessarily have expected.
Yes, I in fact was looking toward the end of this month, not next weekend, but the following weekend, and it seems like to me there's going to be some kind of a rather significant ridge of high pressure building up straight through the nation's midsection and trying to join forces with that upper system, that trough that you mentioned, Joe, that's sliding across eastern Canada, which would produce, hopefully, later on in the month, a nice dry northwesterly flow and maybe even a nice cooler northwesterly flow. Next weekend, I know you're hoping for a bit of a drop in the humidity. It looks like there will be a drop, but it doesn't look like it's going to be a really substantial or significant drop. But as I was telling Renata before, even if it's not a big drop, we've gotten so accustomed and so used to these 70 plus dew points that even if we get a, a small drop or small dip to, let's say, a 66 or 68-degree dew point, which is still very humid under normal circumstances, that still, compared to what we've been dealt in recent days or recent weeks, will feel a little bit better, actually,
Yeah,
because we've become so accustomed to all of this schwitz, if you will,
exactly.
in the air.
And if we look at the European for this evening and tonight, the storms kind of die off, but then they start to fire up again during the day tomorrow, and you can see it's pretty active around. This is at 2 p.m. From Maine down into Virginia and back through Ohio and Kentucky. Then they kind of, you know, fall apart again. Tuesday, some storms pop up, but they were a little bit less and a little more south. We'll have to see, if later models get more robust with this or not. The same on Wednesday in the afternoon and evening. Uh, it looks like tomorrow of the next 3 days would see the greatest chance that you could see some thunderstorms. And then as we move on to Thursday and Friday, again, some stuff pops up. We've got chances here on Thursday and Friday. There's some kind of front that approaches on Friday with some showers and storms. You see it sliding from Maine to New York State to Ohio and kind of sliding southeastward. And there's like a little weak high that builds down. You get maybe a little bit of dew point relief behind it, only to have another front that approaches or another upper trough and front that approaches on Sunday with some late day storms. Then that goes out. And then, then here comes another one for the middle of next week, which would be around the 23rd. And then that goes out. And then you get another front that comes in sometime around July 26th, 27th. And there's another one that comes 2 or 3 days later. So if that flow from Canada can get a little bit stronger, which it may not be able to have much success at for the rest of this month, but if the overall pattern holds, you might see stronger fronts and maybe more, let's call them more quality air masses of lower humidity and cooler temperatures coming down into August. Again, assuming that there's a trough in the east. Now, that may change and we go to a big ridge. I don't know, but I'm just saying that if we hold this pattern, this general pattern into August, it might mean maybe more frequent frontal passages and maybe more frequent arrivals of some slight of cooler and less humid air.
It's difficult it's difficult to maintain a pattern, be it extreme heat or, in this particular case, extreme humidity. I have found you really can't hold on to it for an entire summer.
No.
Generally speaking, if you have a, and we have had very humid, again a break around the 4th of July, but if we have a stretch of very humid conditions into from June into July, I can tell you from experience that it is difficult to stretch that into August and September. Something usually it's like a piece of elastic breaking or snapping. Something is eventually going to break down. And who knows, we may be seeing you pointed out, Joe, and I pointed out too, later on in the month, toward the end of the month, some signals of maybe the flow going more out of the northwest. And that would certainly bring in drier and less humid air and maybe even some somewhat cooler air. So maybe we're beginning to see the first signs of that for the end of the month and maybe into August. We can keep our fingers crossed on that because we have certainly, as I said, gone through more than our fair share of humidity in recent days around here. The air conditioning here at my house, thankfully, the last few days, the temperatures have been hovering in the mid and low 80s, not 90, but we still have had the air conditioner running because of the sheer humidity, the sheer
Yeah.
fact that it's so oppressive out there. And P.S., I don't know how you feel, but it looks like mid and late week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're looking at temperatures that are going to once again soar
Oh
to
yeah.
or
No,
maybe
certainly
above
by
90.
Friday. Yeah, by Friday for sure. Yeah, we could be low to mid 90s again.
Yep.
Yeah. The only thing that's what's helped to really keep the temperatures down is the fact that the winds have been southeast. And the downside to that is that it's off an ocean, and and your dew points are not going to do. Let's say your dew points are just simply not going to do well with the southeast wind. They're going to stay high. So yeah, but I definitely agree with you. As the wind bends around to more south and then southwest, particularly late this week, you're going to see temperatures go up.
Remember those stretches occasionally? And I know that when you were on Pix 11, you especially, in fact, you were the only one on television who would point this out. Because while the other forecasters were going for, let's say, hazy, hot, and humid, when we had that flow coming in from off of the Atlantic, a long stretch of southeasterly winds, you would make reference to tropical skies. You would
Yes.
say that the skies looked more like what you would see in Puerto Rico, which was certainly, or the Caribbean. Certainly they weren't hazy. They were deep shades of blue. But again, you had that blue along with, again, high levels of humidity, tropical weather, and again, it's tropical skies.
Yep. No, that's exactly correct. That's how it is here. Actually, I'm very happy because, I mean, it got to 90 today, but it was sunny. We had blue skies, some Q, and there was one tiny little shower that lasted all of about 10 minutes when I was up. I was up in the next town for a little while this afternoon. I mean, it was just a trace of rain, but we got down to 64 this morning. It was low. So
Wow.
actually, when I went out to the dog park, it really felt nice out. You know, it was comfortable. It was not that uncomfortable. Um, but once the sun got to work and the temperatures went up, well, then it got a little bit tougher. But uh, it's not the stifling humidity that we have in the Northeast and in the Mid-Atlantic states is different from and I've said this many times, the humidity here is much different. And to me, it's much more tolerable. But that's me.
Well, it helps also that you're at 2,200 feet.
Well, we don't, I understand. But I was in town at 1,600 feet in town, and it still was reasonable.
See, now you just mentioned your temperature this morning of 54, and I said
No,
I
not
don't even think
54,
it
64.
64,
64.
64. I mean, I'm looking at the local climatological data for Shrub Oak, which is just a stone's throw away from where I am, and I'm looking at the low temperatures. Um, you know, the 13th. Okay, so this morning, 69, and then on Saturday morning, 68, and Friday morning, 67, Thursday morning, 69, Wednesday morning, 70, 73, 67. The last time we had temperatures here locally, low temperatures in the 50s, was July the 6th. Well, we had that 3 day period. We mentioned
Right.
that break on July the 4th. July the 4th, low temperature 58. July the 5th, double nickels 55, and July the 6th, 59. But prior to that, we had temperatures in the 60s. July 2nd was 68 degrees. So we've had a number of days, the majority of days, in the upper 60s to around 70 for lows, except for that 3 day break around the 4th of July where they were in the 50s. And I'm just waiting for another night where temperatures will be in the 50s so I can give the air conditioners a rest. They've been going nonstop for the last, well, let's see, from July the 7th up until now. It's been, yeah, that's 6 days.
Okay. Let's hold Briller Jeopardy off till tomorrow because I have some things I got to do this evening.
Very
So
good.
um so we're gonna wrap it up here, and we'll be back on our regular time tomorrow night at 7:35 p.m. Eastern time. Don't forget, if you can, shop our referral link on Amazon if you're doing Amazon shopping. If you need a weather station, there's the Tempest Weather Flow by Weatherflow. The links for both are on the descriptor to this podcast underneath the title of the podcast on YouTube. And unless you listen to us on Spotify, in which case you could find it in the descriptor to the podcast on Spotify. So we'll see everybody tomorrow night. Thank you very much for the super chat hits from Murder Lady and also from Sal Patchy. Oh, and Chuck Cardillo. I forgot to mention Chuck. Thank you for hitting the tip jar. Most appreciated. So Chuck
Thank
Cardillo,
you, Chuck.
Murder Lady, and Sal Patchy. And
Thank you.
we'll see everybody tomorrow. Night, night.
Have a good night, folks. We'll see you tomorrow. Don't sweat.